Welcome to episode 3. So we got our coils in today, and we're gonna see what's going on here. So you'll see it's in the original case. It's made by Ambassador Electronics. We'll zoom in there. It's pretty nostalgic. Made by Ambassador Electronics, and it looks like part number KT31, sold for $4 for the set. And it looks like these are replacements. They're GE universal replacements, 455 kilocycles. So that's pretty cool. And I think we lucked out. So let's open it up. And you see we've got the 2 coils in here. And we've got the clips. And the thing I noticed immediately is that there's no yellow. This is clear. Which is really helpful because I can see through here and I can see the mica, right? So let's carefully take one of these things out. And I'll show you what it looks like inside. Now, one thing I noticed on this thing, let me just bend that a little bit. It's got this little ear here. I'm not sure what that's all about yet. I imagine in some radios they would screw down that to something, maybe a ground. I'm not going to worry about it right now. So we've got the ears bent. Let's pull this out. Okay. Here's our tuning cap. I mean our coil. And let me see if I can shine a light through here so you can see. But I don't see any sign of silver mica disease on this thing. I don't see any brown. You're not going to be able to see it on the video, but I don't see any brown or any black or any silver in here. It looks very clean. Yep. So I'm going to assume that this coil is good. Now obviously we're going to test it. We're going to get our meter. And we should get connectivity at a very minimum on the legs. Let's see what we got here. And this is one side here. Okay. That side's good. Let's flip it over. That side's good. Okay. So this is a good coil. Now one thing I want to show you, on the bottom of this coil is a green dot. And when I took this one out, I was very careful to pay attention to the green dot on the old one right there. See it right there on that leg? So I marked it on the bottom of the chassis where the green dot goes. So that's the same way we're going to install this. And I'm gonna put this back into the original can that came with the radio. This way it's original. It's the same can. It should fit just fine. Okay, good. And we're going to bend these ears down. Okay. And of course we're going to check it one more time to make sure it's still good, just in case. When I slid it back into the case, I did something. That's good. That's good. Nothing there, and nothing there. Okay. So we are going to reinstall this back into the radio. We'll connect all the wires, and then we'll do a power-up test and see how it looks. Okay? So let's do that, and I'll come back. Okay, I'm in the process of reinstalling the can, and I just wanted to point out to you right here, you see that blue dot there? That's the dot that I put in when I took out the old can, and you'll see the green mark is right here. So I've got it lined up in the right place. I've already got this wire connected and this red one. Now I'm going to replace the resistor from this 12BA6, which actually goes right to this green leg, and then the other end of the resistor passes through and comes back to this one. So it's just basically going through pin 1 of that tube and coming around. And then there's a white wire that comes off of the detector tube that comes over here. So let me do that. We'll be right back. Okay, we've got our new can installed, and one thing I want to point out here is this grid return resistor. I did change that to a 470K resistor. Originally it was 330K, and this is listed as a modification on the Philco schematic. That was something that was changed later on. And really what that's going to do is it's going to increase the gain of the 12BA6 tube, which is what we want. So we've got this all connected. I'm going to inspect my connections one more time, and then we're going to fire it up and see if it works. Now keep in mind that this other can right here is probably bad as well. So when we fire it up, we're probably going to hear some more crackling, but we'll see. Let's see what we get. We'll be right back. Okay guys, we're back. Let's turn the radio on and see what happens. And I've got some explaining to do, as Ricky Ricardo would say, some splaining. So we'll turn this on. You'll see we've got the antenna hooked up. It's actually a loop antenna inside the case here. We've got it connected with gator wires for the time being. And we're just going to demonstrate that the radio works, and then we'll talk about how we got here, because it's been a pretty long journey.
More than any other advisor, even if you don't become a client, as far as ideas and first to those, then at his alignment prepared to go forward. As soon as we get an agreement,
Okay, add a little bit to this graph because I think it gets a little.
Okay, you get the idea. Let's turn the radio off. I do have it connected to, excuse me, an external antenna right here. It's still in desperate need of an alignment, but the radio works. Now, this segment that I'm shooting now was actually shot 2 weeks or more after the segment right before this. So in the previous video, it's been so long I don't exactly recall, but I think I said I've changed all the caps out and let's test it. Well, when we did that, it just didn't work. There was a huge hum, wasn't working correctly, and required me to do a lot more digging. So I'm going to disconnect this thing from the antenna, and we're going to talk about what we needed to do to get this radio to play. And the reason why I want to do that is, this is about being instructional, right? And not shortcutting what it took for us to get here. So let's start at the top of the radio for a moment. So one thing you may notice in this video, as you didn't see in the previous one, was that tuning cap looks really clean. So one of the things that I observed was that the tuning cap was just very, very dirty, and I was unable to pull in a station. So that was the first problem. So I ended up pulling off the tuning cap, putting it in Evaporust overnight, got rid of all the rust, cleaned it with a toothbrush, and she's in very sweet shape. In this particular radio, it's important to note that the tuning cap is isolated from the chassis. So it's got rubber grommets. So I actually replaced the rubber grommets. You can see one right here. And I've replaced them because the ones that were there were very, very tattered and torn. And I've got some newer under here. You may be able to see one. We've also replaced the two cans. So these cans had a bad case of silver mica disease. And I saved one of them to show you. I've actually tried to do surgery on one of these and I've destroyed it. Here's the one I destroyed. No good. But I do have another one here that I saved to show you, and we're gonna find that one in a second and give it to you. And essentially, what we've learned is that these kind of cans are just really, really hard. This is the second can that I replaced, and it's this one right here. And I don't know if you can see in there, but you see the black and silver? This thing has bad silver mica disease. In order to get this out, in order to change it, you have to get a Dremel tool with a burring bit, and you got to burr out this this grommet, not all the way down, but to the point where you can get this plate off on top. And when you do that, you'll be able to slip out the mica. Then you have to cut the metal legs on either side so that these two contacts don't touch, and then put it all back together and figure out how you're going to bend that grommet back in. When I did that on the first one, first thing I did was I broke the wires. So once you break the wires that flow down these little channels here, you're dead. So I ended up getting new IF cans, 455 KC. Got them on eBay. Didn't pay a lot of money for them. There's two different kinds in this radio. This one is a 4-lug. This one is a 6-lug. So we've ended up replacing both of these. Okay? We've also got our tubes nice and clean. And let's flip it over and we'll show you where we are on the bottom side. so let me just get something to hold this thing up so I can show you. There you go. All right, so on the bottom side here, you'll notice that I have our caps right here. These are our filter caps, and there's 3 47 microfarad caps in here. And you'll notice that I put 2 safety caps here, okay? And these safety caps essentially will protect the radio and protect the user. Although I do have a 3-prong cord in here and I have the hot side going to the switch, this radio has its own floating B minus or negative B rail, and it has no reference to ground. And the only thing going to ground on this chassis was a 0.1 cap. I think it was 0.1 or 0.01 between the floating B minus and the chassis. Okay, and what would happen is if that cap went bad, the radio would smoke. First of all, that wouldn't be a good thing, and you get shocked probably. So by putting the safety caps in, if this radio ever starts to have a problem, these safety caps will blow and you'll be protected. You'll notice here, if I try to zoom in just a tiny bit, I've replaced every resistor. Every resistor's been replaced, and in order to do that, I had to strip all the old solder and wires off these tube sockets very carefully. They were just caked on with solder, where it got to the point where it was just almost impossible to attach anything to it. So I had to clean that up. And if we look over here, I've done the same thing here. This is our output tube. There's a 220 picofarad cap here let's see, there's 10 volts here. This is a 50 volt cap right here. And I've got all of our capacitors, and remember, there's no transformer in this thing, so these are all dropping caps. These are the cans that I replaced. Here's one, here's 2. They're pretty simple. Just have to make sure you mark your connections. Here's our oscillator. Let's pull the shot up so you can see it. Here's our oscillator. I didn't have to remove that. And there's some caps under here I had to replace. I also found some things were shorted together, so I had to fix that. So that had to do with this messy socket. I also found that the original power/volume pot was bad. So I can only get high volume on this thing. Turning the pot meant absolutely nothing. So I replaced it with a new 500K power/pot. It's a little bit shorter, so I'm going to have to put an extension on it. It's actually shorter by about an inch. So I'll put an extension on it. And we've got a new 500K cap in there, potentiometer. So, excuse me. Once I put this all back together and tested it, I then came into my next problem. So looking at, for me, a typical radio is you attach an antenna and you test it, right? So what I did was I took my external antenna and I connected it right here, right? And this is the antenna section of the tuning cap. This is the oscillator section. This is the antenna section. Hooked it right here, loads a hum. Hooked it right here, and this goes to pin 6 of the 14BA6 tube. Lots of hum. Hook it up here to the oscillator side. I was able to get a little bit of a station, but anything connected here was a huge hum. Until I realized after talking to Brendan why that was. So this radio basically has 2 coil antenna. There's actually 2 coils together, and they are designed for this radio, and they're designed to only work with this radio correctly. So so what I've learned is that you connect one side of the coil, one direct connection of the coil right here, right here and here. And this bewildered me when I first got the radio, like, what are these 2 things for? There's nothing connected to them. Well, that's where the other coil goes to in the antenna. One is a ground to the chassis, and this one is for an external antenna. So when you connect that loop antenna here, it allows you to put an external antenna here, which I had, when it was playing a moment ago. So now I've got my antenna stuff straight. So the radio is in good shape. It's working. So now we're at baseline, believe it or not, right? So if you remember, the original intent of this series was to get the radio back to baseline and then do some mods on it and show you how to improve it. So now we're at the point where we could start to do the improvements. Isn't that great? But the first thing I want to do is a full proper alignment on this radio. And that's going to be critical for us to make sure we've got it right. And as I was informed by Brendan, don't use gator wire to connect the antenna. Just connect it directly to the chassis. So we'll do that temporarily. In order to do an alignment on this radio, what they want you to do is they want you to connect the ground lead of your signal generator to B minus. Now, because we've got the safety caps there, we actually removed the resistor R100 if you're following along on the schematic. We're able to actually connect our lead to the chassis, so we don't have to go directly to the B minus rail. And we have to put our output of the signal generator through a 0.1 cap to pin 6, which is right here, so it's convenient. And we have to set the dial to 455 kc, and we have to make sure that this is fully ganged, fully closed, like this. All right, so we put our signal generator on 455. This is fully closed, and then we have to start doing our alignment. All right, and the first thing we do is the second IF. We do the secondary, then we do the primary, and then the same thing for the first IF. Right, secondary and primary, and we should get a nice clean, nice clean signal. Then we want to connect the radiating antenna, and we want to set the signal generator to 1600 kc and the dial, and then we want to make sure we adjust for maximum volume. And then the third step is basically the same thing, except we're going to bring it down to 1500 kc, and we're going to adjust for maximum output. And then this thing should be aligned properly. I have a feeling it's pretty close. As you've just heard, it does pull in stations really well. I probably need to do some adjustments here on these two. Okay? And that's my my aerial and my oscillator. But we're going to do that now. By the way, for those of you that think I'm sadistic, when I removed this tuning cap, I had to rewire it again. I told you, guys, I love doing dial string. Piece of cake. So the next step, there is another dial wire I need to do, which goes on the pointer, and you can see the paint is peeling off this thing. So I'm going to remove this bar, paint it gold, and put it back on, and then I'll put the actual dial pointer on. And then we're going to start to do some mods. So in the next video, that's what we're going to do. We're going to start modding this thing. We're going to replace the speaker. If you recall, we're going to get better bass response out of this thing because it's very, very tinny. This speaker is as chintzy as it gets. And we're going to figure out what kind of speaker we're going to put in there and how to mount it. And I have some options, so that's good. And we're going to try to make this thing sound a whole lot better. So I apologize for taking so long to post this one. I've been really struggling with this thing. Working underneath this chassis is not simple. It's tight in there. Replacing those cans, I had to wait for them to come in. I had to ohm them out, make sure that they were the right values. If you look on the schematic, it does tell you how many ohms each coil was, so I matched them. They're good. Then I had to troubleshoot the volume control and replace that, and clean up all these sockets and all that. So we are ready to start doing our mods in the next video. So we're finally on track again. So apologize for the little hiatus, but that's what happens sometimes. Sometimes you just have to suck it up and get it working. So our radio's good. And on the next episode, we'll start working on mods. All right? Appreciate you guys every day for hanging out and watching and commenting. And I will see you soon. Take care.